Welcome, my name is Joshua, the garden is growing, and today I want to show you a tour of my garden. I'll show you everything we have going on. I hope to inspire you on your gardening journey. I am not a professional, I am an enthusiast, so I still have lots to learn myself, and that's kind of my main thing, is sharing with you what I learn as I learn it and things I've learned over the seasons. So with that, let's go ahead and start with the garden tour. So all four sides of the garden are 50 feet wide. So the space inside is pretty big, but it's not as big as a lot of, gardens, homesteads, mini farms. We're not in that scale. We do have plans to expand this winter. So I'm excited about that. We'll go into that more details later on. But what we have going on for just the outside, the fencing, we have about 3 feet of chicken wire, mulch mounded up around that, kind of buried a couple inches around the mulch. So that's doing a decent job at keeping out some of the smaller animals like rabbits and groundhogs. If they tried hard, groundhogs definitely could chew through it. They haven't yet. It has been a great deterrent. So we'll kind of play it by ear, see if we need to do something bigger or something stronger. Hardware cloth is definitely a better material when it comes to a fencing that can keep multiple types of animals out. It is more expensive. So the reason we went for the chicken wire was the cost, and that's also why we only did 3 feet tall. Now, with that, we also did going up to 7 feet. We have electric fence wire. It's not electrified, but we have the electric fence wire going every 4 to 6 inches going up to 7 feet. That's gonna help with the deer, and it has. It's kept the deer out of the garden. It's not perfect. If animals wanted to get in, they could, if they tried hard enough. One of the main things was fencing in a larger area of space with not spending thousands of dollars to do it. And this has definitely been a great cost-effective way of fencing in the garden for this year. The gate is also very cost-effective. It's a PVC pipe frame. We do have the hardware cloth, which is stronger and smaller spaces in between than the chicken wire. Just costs more. So for the gate, I just have the hinges are the zip ties, the plastic zip ties as the hinges. We have I think it's a 12-inch nail. PVC pipe can kind of go and sit right on it. It's a great way to kind of hold it closed from the animals being able to paw it open, and it's actually worked really well. So you just lift it up, pull it open. It's definitely not the most elaborate gate you've seen, but it's done a great job, and it's, again, cost-effective and something that most of us can do just as a DIY project. As soon as you walk in the gate and you turn left, we have 4 fabric grow bags, and we have 2 wooden planters. Fabric grow bags have been great. I've been using them for years and years. Our oldest ones are either 5 or 6 years old, so they do last a good amount of time. They cost about $2 each, so very affordable. They allow air pruning, so air can get to the roots. So it helps with not making the plants root bound. It lets water drain super easy. So I like using these fabric grow bags. I'll put a link in the description for some of the ones that I've purchased myself. We have 2 wooden planters here. I actually got those. I bought them from someone off of Facebook Marketplace. So they are used, and we actually got some free raspberry plants that were in them. So it was a fun surprise there. Moving on, we have this cattle panel trellis. It's one of 2 that we currently have. It's really cool. Let's take a closer look at that. So this is a new addition this year. Most of this garden actually is new this year. We started the garden in 2020, and we've expanded it 3 times since then. It started off as a smaller space, about let's say maybe about 20 feet by 10 feet, and then it got expanded and pushed to the back of the yard. I prepped more space going down. There's a hill here going down this hill. And then the 3rd expansion, we actually removed the fence that was between the house and the garden and making the house part of the garden. So it's really been a fun process expanding it, and we have plans to expand it further that direction. But let's get back to this trellis here. So this is a 16-foot by 50 inches cattle panel from Tractor Supply. We have 2 T-posts on either end, and we have the 16-foot cattle panel arched over it. So this is really cool. This one here, plenty of room for us to walk over. The plants here, it's at the end of the season, so these are dying. These are cucamelons. If you haven't seen them before, highly recommend growing them. They're a little bit sour, but they taste like a cucumber, but they look like little watermelon. We have one end in a wooden bed. We'll talk about those beds shortly. We have the other end in a concrete bed. Go into more of that as well. But yeah, we have two of these, one here, one at the bottom of the hill. So I mentioned this slope a couple times. It's a gradual slope. About half of the garden is on it. And what we decided to do is actually do kind of a retaining wall concrete raised bed. Let me explain a little bit more. This one here is a work in progress. I started it in the spring, never completed it. That's one of my current projects that I do have on my list, is to finish this one. Let me show you some of the completed ones. So here we have 4 of those cinder block retaining wall raised beds. And the way that it works is there's just a row of cinder blocks, concrete blocks on one side, and then 2 going up for the 2 sides. So we have an open back that just meets the land, the top of the hill, and then the retaining wall, so that way it can be level growing space. What I did was I dug out the dirt from this, because our soil, the top layer is super rocky and under that is clay. So the native soil isn't the best. So what we did was we dug out the rocks. We actually sifted it through some hardware cloth to get the rocks out so we can keep the dirt. When we sifted it out, there were a decent amount of worms in it. So that was a good sign that there is some health in the soil. It's just not super accessible. So what we did was we sifted out those rocks. I dug out some of the clay just so that way we could put in a mix of some better soil ready to go. Since we wanted to plant in these immediately. So we did that. We put in some soil that we had purchased. The dump truck has come and dumped it. So we had that. We put the soil that we sifted back in, and we have 4 of those going, and they have done amazing this season. We've grown peppers, we've grown carrots, we've grown tomatoes, we've grown squash, we've grown broccoli, we've grown Brussels sprouts, potatoes. Potatoes did amazing in it because it was all loose soil. And I think these are a great solution. Some people are hesitant with using concrete. It isn't good to use if it was made with fly ash. What I was able to find out is that fly ash hasn't been used recently to make these concrete blocks. So these new ones that I have purchased from Lowe's, they shouldn't have fly ash in them from my research. One negative thing though that still exists is that they do leach lime into the soil long term. So it can make the soil more alkaline, it can raise that pH level. So it would be something to keep in mind. I've got blueberries planted in one. I'm already adding some acidic fertilizer to make sure that the blueberries have the pH level that they grow best in. Obviously, do what you want to for your garden. I don't want to tell you what to do in your garden. I want to show you what I'm doing, show you what I'm learning, and just kind of encourage you and help you in your gardening journey. That's one of my passions. This part of the garden I'm really excited to share. This is something we tried for the first time this year, and it is the 3 Sisters companion growing technique. So we did it as 3 circles. This technique has been passed down from the Native Americans. There's a lot of rich history around it. And what we did was we grew corn, and next to the corn we grew beans, climbing beans. The climbing beans used the corn as a trellis, and it climbed the corn as the beans grew. And we also grew squash around it. So the corn acts as a trellis for the climbing beans. The beans can fix some nitrogen into the soil. The squash acts as a living mulch to help shade the dirt around it. I'm going to do some more on this, kind of a recap later on as we prepare to do it again next year with some altercations to make it even better and to apply some of the things I've learned. I want to learn so much more about companion planting as well. It's a great way to utilize space, but also to help plants help each other. So you don't need as much fertilizer, you don't have as much diseases. There's a lot of great things we can all learn from companion planting. Heading up the hill from the 3 Sisters in the back corner here, let's talk about our 2 Florida weave style trellises on this side and a longer one going up the hill over here with some very dead tomato plants on it. We recently had a frost that killed these tomato plants. That's why they look so sad. But the way that we grew them this year is we have T-post staggered on a line, and we used some poly twine. This poly twine we actually can get 2 seasons out of if we save it, but basically you just weave it in between the plants as they grow. It helps support them, and you don't have to stake every single tomato plant. There's a lot of great options for trellising, but the Florida weave is one that I have been enjoying using. It has its ups and downs. It's not as great for plants that get super tall, like these indeterminate tomato plants. But yeah, Florida weave, we're using it here, we used it there, and let me show you the snap peas. All right, let me help orient you here. The gate that we came in on is up there in that corner. The first arch trellis is there. The arch trellis at the bottom of the hill is there. The Three Sisters planting is here. The snap peas I want to talk to you about are right here. So snap peas are a cold loving crop, so we actually have them growing right now. Let me find one here. I'm just going to go ahead and munch on it. Here we go. It's delicious. So with this, we have just 2 T-posts, 2 10-foot T-posts, and we have the twine. These have grown outside. We could have put some on, but they do a great job gripping it. But we have the twine here that we're just making rows. Basically, I'm going around the T-post and I'm going straight to the other T-post and around it and having the peas grow up through the twine. This is, I think, my 3rd or 4th time doing it this way, and I think it works great for the peas since they need something to climb. It's kind of like the Florida weave is what inspired it. I know it's technically not weaving it, but yeah, twine between 2 posts. You can trellis so many things this way. Very cost effective as well. Here's the second arch trellis, and this year we did something really cool with it. First, it's the first year we've grown on it because the arch trellises are new to our garden, but we grew loofah, which is also the first time we've grown loofah, and it's amazing. It is a sponge, a natural sponge. You can eat it when they're smaller. If you let them mature and dry out, then you can harvest them to use for sponges in the bath, in the kitchen. A great thing. We're going to definitely be growing again next year, and the arch trellis is a great way to grow it. We grew cucumbers on this side to start the year. The loofah took over. We still got a bunch of cucumbers before the loofah took over, but it helped us use up both sides while the loofah was still growing. You can't see it at that angle, but we have grow bags lining the fence that we can use to grow so many new things, utilizing all of the space around us. And what we did on either side of the loofah arch trellis is I actually kind of just amended in the ground. So I removed some of the rocky soil. I put in some of the soil that we had delivered, really good compost topsoil mix, very healthy soil. And we put in some of our homemade compost, and we use shredded leaves as a topper for pretty much everything. But yeah, so it's directly in the ground on either side of the arch trellis. This year was also a first year for us for using these metal raised beds. I have a collaboration with a raised bed company that I'll be doing shortly, and I'll talk a lot more about it. But yeah, it's really cool. We are growing kale and radishes, and they survived the frost. They're doing fine. We also have some more snap peas over here on a very DIY trellis. Let me share more about those trellises. I like these trellises a lot. What they are, it's a PVC pipe frame, and it's old metal fencing. So this was, at one point in its life, fencing around our garden. It actually came with us from our old house. We were renting. Our landlord was gracious to let us use a portion of the backyard as a garden. So a great landlord situation there. But that's where this fencing came from. What we did, what you could do, is build a frame with PVC pipe, attach this. You can attach it with, metal wire if you want to. We're using zip ties, and it has a T-post on either end. I have smaller versions of these. Let me show you those. All right, so these aren't as wide. So with them not being as wide, I went ahead and just did a single T-post in the middle to use less supplies. Didn't have to buy as many T-posts, and just one in the middle with 2 sides of the frame also in the ground. It moves a little bit in the wind, but it's super secure. We grew climbing beans on this. We grew snap peas on this. We've grown cucumbers on this. You can really grow so much. You can even grow squash. Like, it's strong enough, as it's as strong as you want to build it. But yeah, we love using leftover supplies for trellises. Hopefully this has given you a few ideas for what you can use around your house for trellises as well. Now, these trellises are actually in some of our original beds for this garden. Let's go ahead and talk about these untreated pine beds what I like about them, what I don't like, and why we're going to be replacing them. All right, here it is. This is our original garden bed. For this garden we put in 2020. We also had a lot of grow bags, and then we started building some more of these raised beds. Back then, all right, so this was spring 2020, before things got too crazy in the world. The cost of pine, it's untreated pine, we paid about $7 for an 8-foot board. Buying 3 of those, so about $21 and some change, would give us an 8-foot by 4-foot bed, which is what this is. And that was great. I knew choosing untreated pine, I only had a life expectancy of 2 to 5 years. 5 years, maybe not as realistic. Because the untreated pine will break down. There's not much keeping it from rotting. The reason we went with untreated pine was the cost, and also we didn't want to play with any treated woods. The newer treated woods are definitely safer than ways that wood was treated previously. I need to learn more and educate myself more on that, but I'm still staying away from all treated woods in the garden. $21 for this bed, knowing it was only going to last a couple of years, starting off small, knowing we're going to build. In a couple of years, I'll probably be in a better spot to replace it. I recommend it for people that are starting out. They are realizing it's not going to last forever. You do have to put in a lot more effort then when it comes to replace it. But if you have a smaller budget and you want to do kind of as much as you can with what you have, there's nothing wrong with it. Just be aware that it won't last forever. The cool thing is we're going to be replacing these with some metal raised beds like the one you saw before. There's another one behind me. Actually, let's go ahead and take a look at that one, because we currently have some garlic planted in it, which is our very first garlic planting. So here it is. This is our first ever garlic planting. We finished this bed 3 weeks ago. We finished filling it up 3 weeks ago, and I've got a short that you can go in and watch it. How we filled it up with different layers. There's tons and tons of comments on that. Definitely people have different opinions on how to fill these beds, but so far it's a success, and I wouldn't do it differently. There are things that I'm gonna do different for other ones, just to try different things, and some of the beds are gonna be taller, but for this one it's doing great. You can see it sunk a little bit here. For the most part, it's only gone down a little bit. I do expect it to go down quite a bit more through the winter and into the spring, but the garlic is already sprouting. We have hardneck garlic here, soft neck garlic back there, and we're gonna get some scapes in the spring, harvest some garlic in the summer, and the only potentially thing that could go wrong is this bed sinking too much and causing a disturbance to the garlic roots. So it's gonna be fun. Follow along to see how this garlic does. I'll give updates through the season. I'm gonna show you our flower garden, and then I wanna tell you just a few projects that I have going for next year. But yeah, let's take a look at that flower garden. You're gonna have to use your imagination a little bit here. There's lots of leaves covering it, so you can't see what we have here, and we're gonna be expanding it. So there's a brick border, no, rocks, stone. It's actually the bigger stones and rocks that we dug up while preparing some of the other concrete retaining wall beds. We got so many rocks from that. So we have a nice border here. We have flowers here. It's overgrown. The season's done. Haven't done anything to clean them up as of yet. And that's okay. You don't have to clean up your flower beds until the spring. Don't let anyone pressure you otherwise. I probably will, but I'll leave all the roots in. That's a topic for another time. But this flower bed right now is only to here. We're gonna stretch it all the way along the side of the house. It's gonna go all the way down. And with that, we're going to plant some native pollinators. We're going to plant a lot of annuals that will be starting indoors. Some seeds we'll plant directly. But this is a work in progress. We're going to have this filled with flowers next year. Super excited about that. Now let's exit the gate that we walked in at the beginning of the video and talk about what plans we have to expand the garden for next year. This space here, we're planning on fencing in, making it a continuation of the garden, maybe mulch everywhere. We already have those mulch piles back there. mulch everywhere and maybe rows of compost on top of the mulch and then plant in that. It'll break down with the wood chips. There's some really cool no-dig gardening approaches, back to Eden methods. So I'm looking into all of that, and I want to have that in place this winter, early spring, so we can plant in it and expand the garden into all of this space. And I couldn't end a garden tour without talking about our compost section. It's just outside the garden, outside the fence. We have a 3-bin system, and it's actually chicken wire. Chicken wire, 2 T-posts. I have it stapled in the ground, makes a circle, very inexpensive. You see a trend here. I'm trying to do things on a budget, but I also want to help inspire other people to garden, you included, and I want to help give lower cost options. Now, there are people with different financial pictures on what they want to spend into a garden. Some of you are looking at those raised beds and say, oh, those are expensive. Why would you ever use those? Some of you are looking at this and saying, that's so flimsy. Come on, you could do something better. Yes, to all of that. But everybody's in a different position. There are benefits to high quality builds that will last 10, 20 years. Honestly, we don't know how long we'll be in this house. We might move in a couple years, and with that, I don't need to have something that's going to last 20 years, but I want to also make sure I don't have to keep redoing things every year or two. So there's that balance and trying to figure it out, but in the process, I can experiment with so many different types of growing mediums, different ways of building raised beds, different ways of amending the ground, different ways of setting up compost. So it's really exciting. I'm really glad that you have watched this video. You've made it to the end. I'd love for you to go ahead and follow, subscribe. I'm newer here on YouTube. I've focused more on short form videos up until now. I'll continue doing that on this platform and others, but I will also shift focus a little bit and do longer YouTube videos. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really glad that you're here. Let's grow our gardens together. Again, my name is Joshua. The garden is growing, and I hope you can spend some time in your garden today.